What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, let me paint a picture for you just a second. Okay, imagine being so deranged that you can't see what reality is anymore. You take everything so literally, and then you take it and put such a negative spin on it that it's so divorced from reality that people can't even recognize what in the hell is even going on. Like, what am I actually talking about? I've got some more leftist insanity for you guys coming up in just a second. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and play it. Check this out, y'all.
That could never be called an answer. And then he ended his response to that question about corporate taxes with this hateful statement about Chuck Schumer.
Schumer is a Palestinian as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian.
Not a single Republican anywhere in America who claims to be a staunch supporter of Israel and the Jewish people rose up to object to Donald Trump, declaring Chuck Schumer to not be Jewish anymore. So Donald Trump, who has no idea what it is to be Jewish or Palestinian, now decides who is Jewish in this country? Only in his own perverse, deeply perverse brain could he do that. But the disgrace of every elected Republican in Washington is that not one of them dares to complain about that kind of poison coming out of the foul mouth of Donald Trump. And not one of them worries about the mental capacity of the kind of person who can say that, who, oh, by the way, has access to the nuclear codes while he's saying things like that. Donald Trump's mind is gone. It is shattered. You just saw that. There is no recognizable neurological function going on there. Not a single person who ever tries to interpret Donald Trump for you and defensively tries to tell you what Donald Trump meant when he says something insane ever uses the actual words of Donald Trump to explain Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump, who once said, "I have the best words," says things all the time, every day, that make absolutely no sense and frequently are filled with hatred.
You know what else is filled with hatred, huh? Now, I will say right off the top that rant went on, honestly, for 13 minutes. Yes, he ranted about Donald Trump insulting Chuck Schumer for 13 minutes, right? Like, I wasn't going to get all of that. I'm like, oh, come on, dude. Like somebody else's neurological functions are not firing properly, are they? Like, this dude is so deranged with Donald Trump that he can't even tell what just a basic insult is. He's like, how come no Republicans stood up? Oh my God, I'm so mad. Like, come on. That was kind of like a joke / insult type of joke going on here, and he takes it seriously. This is what is wrong today in modern media, folks. Welcome to the mainstream news. This is just utterly ridiculous. I thought I would get a laugh out of that. I figured you guys could get a laugh out of that, so I went ahead and ran that clip because it's hilarious to watch these people. Like, they don't realize that they're being ridiculous, just completely ridiculous with this. Like, 13 minutes. It was a 19-minute video. And yeah, he went 13 minutes straight talking about Donald Trump calling Chuck Schumer a Palestinian. I find that hilarious, if you ask me. He got mad at not only Republicans, but he got mad at the reporters for not saying anything. He looked genuinely aggravated. I would suggest everybody go watch the full clip. It is completely unhinged, just totally unhinged rant about Donald Trump calling Chuck Schumer a Palestinian. He's no longer Jewish, y'all. He is no longer a Jew. But I've got another story for y'all. Let's get into this right quick because this is fascinating, y'all. Check this out. Trump administration asks Supreme Court to partly allow birthright citizenship restrictions. That is right. So what Donald Trump is doing, he you know, as we know, he issued a flurry of executive orders come out, and birthright citizenship was one of them, based upon the fact that under the 14th Amendment, it does say that any persons born within the borders of the United States shall be U.S. citizens. But it also says under the jurisdiction thereof. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, I interpret that because, they could have left that under the jurisdiction thereof. They could have left that out. But they put that in there for a very specific reason, right? Because they understand that people can cross into your borders, cross into your country. And if they carry their wife with them and that she is pregnant and then has a baby, right? They're not under your jurisdiction because they're not supposed to be in the country. That's how I interpretate that. And I do believe when this makes it to the Supreme Court that that's going to be the main argument. And I do believe that the Supreme Court justices will probably get a 5-4 ruling, with the justices ruling in favor of the Trump administration on this birthright citizenship. Now, we'll get into the executive order here in a second, but let's get into this story right quick so we can break down the particulars, because there's another interesting little aspect to this that I find very fascinating. I'll check this out. The Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to allow restrictions on birthright citizenship to partly take effect while legal fights play out. In emergency applications filed at the High Court on Thursday, the administration asked the justices to narrow court orders entered by district judges in Maryland, Massachusetts, and Washington that blocked the order President Donald Trump signed shortly after beginning his second term. The order currently is blocked nationwide. 3 federal appeals courts have rejected the administration's pleas, including one in Massachusetts on Tuesday. The order would deny citizenship to those born after February 19th whose parents are in the country illegally. It also forbids U.S. agencies from issuing any document or accepting any state document recognizing citizenship for such children. Now, I had to switch. I read, I think, 4 different news sites, their articles on this. And the Post Millennial actually did a pretty good job of summarizing the executive order in its entirety. The order reads, "It is the policy of the United States that no department or agency of the United States government shall issue documents recognizing United States citizenship or accept documents issued by state, local, or other governments or authorities purporting to recognize United States citizenship to persons, 1, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the person's father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. 2, when that person's mother's presence in the United States was lawful but temporary and the person's father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth." Now, that's very, very specific, and none of the other corporate press outlets ever actually put that specificity into their news articles, as a matter of fact, because that would state that somebody that's here on a visa, which a visa is temporary, but if you have a permanent residence, in other words, if you're awaiting citizenship, that means if you have a child at that time, your child will be a United States citizen. Right? And nobody ever says this. None of the other corporate press outlets ever put that in there. So I was like, oh, fascinating. They actually threw that in there, and I didn't read the executive order outright. So hopefully that's word for word, and it sounds like it's word for word. But as a matter of fact, it's funny how corporate press works. Right quick, I'm going to break this down. Because, like, the video I'm presenting today is actually coming from 3 different sources. The Associated Press, as we saw from the headline, the Post Millennial, as we saw for that, and that's all we get from the Post Millennial, and NBC News. They all had different areas of this that they kind of focused in on, which I find fascinating, right? I just find that so fascinating that they would choose to focus on a certain aspect of what's going on with this. But we're going to get a pretty good wide breakdown of what is actually going on with this case. I'm hoping, once again, like I said earlier, the Supreme Court actually rules in favor of the Trump administration, because, yeah, people that come across our borders illegally, I don't see them being under our jurisdiction, as a matter of fact, right? Well, I mean, we have the right to kick them out of the country, actually. But, if they enter this country illegally, when you think about that, Like, we have no idea that these people are here. How can we take responsibility for these people if they're not supposed to be here in the first place, and we don't know that they're here? They didn't go to a port of entry or anything like that. So it's like, I can see that being the reason that they put that in the 14th Amendment, making sure that they stated under the jurisdiction thereof. That they didn't write things, they didn't just randomly put words into the Constitution. Everything was thought out, worked out, with deep thoughts going into everything put into the Constitution. Read the Federalist Papers. I know I screwed up when I said that, but the Federalist Papers kind of explain, they break down a lot about the Constitution, about the forming of the country. They're great. I would suggest go read them. It's not a very exciting read unless you're kind of into that kind of stuff, but it is what it is. Let's get back to the news. All right, this little section coming up is the argument from the Trump administration, a DOJ prosecutor, as a matter of fact, Mrs. Harris, on another aspect of this case, going in on injunctions, as a matter of fact. Let's get into it. Check this out, y'all. This court should declare that enough is enough before district courts' burgeoning reliance on universal injunctions becomes further entrenched, she added. Harris also argued that the states do not have legal standing to sue, saying they cannot assert 14th Amendment claims on behalf of their residents. Now, that other part was going in on the aspect of, local federal district courts issuing nationwide injunctions, right? Basically ruling outside of the lawsuit itself, because I think it's 14 states, 14 attorneys general of 14 Democratic states brought this suit, right? So when you think about that for a second, that suit, the injunction on that, should only relate to those Democratic states, if you know what I mean, right? It shouldn't put a pause on the entire executive order, because that's coming from higher up than the states. So the federal government should have authority to do so, and if they want to put an injunction on this, it should be limited to the actual court case, right? The actual states that are suing the federal government. Now, what these injunctions, and that's what she was arguing, that they're relying heavily on this nationwide injunction garbage, and we need precedents to kind of stop the lower courts from issuing these nationwide injunctions. And I happen to agree with that. But then she goes on to start talking about the actual standing. Check this out. The states simply cannot assert citizenship rights on behalf of individuals, so the district courts should not have granted any relief to them, she wrote. Presidents of both parties have complained about judges issuing nationwide injunctions in recent years. So have some Supreme Court justices, but the courts has yet to meaningfully rein them in. And now we're going back to the Associated Press to kind of round this thing out. Let's keep going. The administration instead wants the justices to allow the Trump's plan to go into effect for everyone except the handful of people and group that sued, arguing that the states lack the legal right or standing to challenge the executive order. That's kind of talking about what we was just now talking about. As a fallback, the administration asked a minimum to be allowed to make public announcements about how they plan to carry out the policy if it eventually is allowed to take effect. 5 conservative justices, a majority of the court, have raised concerns in the past about nationwide or universal injunctions, but the court has never ruled on the matter. The administration made a similar argument in Trump's first term, including a Supreme Court fight over his ban on travel to the U.S. from several Muslim-majority countries. You love how they put that. Oh, it's a Muslim ban. And see, this is part of the manipulation that I'm always warning about right there. They could have easily said that the ban, they could have given the context out of the actual travel ban and said that, the travel ban was for countries that had terrorist organizations operating within them, instead of saying from several Muslim majority countries. This is the manipulation that they're always on. It's constant, y'all. The court eventually upheld Trump's policy, but did not take up the issue of nationwide injunctions. The problem has only gotten worse. Acting Solicitor General Sarah Harris told the court on Thursday. Courts issued 15 orders blocking administration actions nationwide in February alone, compared to 14 such orders in the first 3 years of President Joe Biden's term, she wrote. The heightened pace of activity also reflects how quickly Trump has moved less than 2 months in office to fire thousands of federal workers, upend tens of billions of dollars in foreign and domestic aid, roll back the rights of transgender people, and restrict birthright citizenship. Now, what I find hilarious about that is the way this is all set up, right? The quote from Sarah Harris, or whoever that was, stopped at the previous paragraph. So that last paragraph where they were talking about, roll back the rights of transgender people, that comes from the Associated Press. Now, Donald Trump has absolutely, that's fake news, as a matter of fact, Donald Trump has not rolled back the rights of any transgender people. It's just a blanket lie. Like, all of that was pretty much a blanket lie, right? Sure, he's trying to restrict birthright citizenship for criminal aliens. Once again, they're not giving you the context, but they did kind of give you some context. But they didn't actually type out the entirety of the executive order. I had to go to the Post Millennial to get that, but that's why I added it in, to add in that context. So, they're lying constantly on this. So I wouldn't take any of this other nonsense take it with a grain of salt, as a matter of fact. But the birthright citizenship thing, right? Like, we've got to draw a line somewhere. Right, and leftist Democrats, they're losing their freaking minds over this, and I really can't see the argument on this. Like, seriously, these people came into the country illegally. They broke our laws. They're not supposed to be here. We should treat them as such. But they don't want to treat them like that, right? This is nonsense. Like, the Democrats can't see that some people abuse our laws. They abuse the words written in our constitutions to anchor themselves to this country that's spitting in our face. And Democrats say they don't care. They do not care. Allow them to do so. That, to me, is nonsense, y'all. It's just utter nonsense. But, like, getting to the transgender rights thing, let's talk about that for a second. Because, what? What do you mean rolling back transgender rights? I'm sorry, you can't. We have this thing called the Bill of Rights. You can't roll back anybody's rights, as a matter of fact, right? Like, they try to say that with abortion, but abortion isn't a right. It's absolutely a privilege, but, it is what it is. But, the transgender rights, I would love for somebody, please, what are these so-called transgender rights that this specific group of people is supposed to get that nobody else has? Like, I don't understand that at all. Nobody ever breaks it down. Why does a certain group get more rights than everybody else? Because they already have all of the same rights that everybody else does. So what are these so-called rights? I would love to know that. If you know, let me know down in the comment section. But nobody ever does, ever. Because they don't know either, I'm sure. But I just find this all fascinating. I really, really hope the Supreme Court actually rules on the side of the administration on this one, because, birthright citizenship, once again, like I was saying, it's spitting in our face, essentially. Like, imagine going into somebody else's country and, bringing your pregnant wife, going in illegally, having a kid to anchor yourself to that country, and then getting subsidized for doing so. Right? Like, that's what was happening under the Biden administration. I mean, they were getting all kind of subsidies, They're pretty much subsidizing their daily life, for crying out loud. That was absurd. Which, speaking of that, by the way, the Biden administration was moving money all over the place. Money that was already allocated to go to a certain place by Congress, so Joe Biden was breaking the law that was illegal according to Democrats, because that's exactly what Trump is doing, and they're making the argument that all of this nonsense is illegal. And I know we're kind of jumping around all over the freaking place, but I really don't care at this point. Why the hell not? Keep it interesting. Keep it going. It just doesn't make any sense. Democrats have lost logic on this one. And speaking of that, lost logic, I had somebody the other day, as a matter of fact, it was last night. It was on one of my Piers Morgan videos. The guy was like, your entire comment section disagrees with you, so just admit that you're wrong. And I'm like, no, just because all of you people are wrong, y'all are misunderstanding what I'm saying. Absolutely. I agree with the guy for the most part, but he's wrong on the implementation of the resolution to fix it. You don't just tax wealth. That's ridiculous. The guy hasn't replied yet, but I just find it funny that the guy's trying to force me to admit that I was wrong. Like, you don't listen, do you? None of these people listen. I'm kind of leaning toward this might be a sock puppet, because I do get sock puppets in my comment section. I've been noticing these sock puppets. They'll come in and start arguing with me, and I agree with them. Like, I made agreeable statements in the video, and they're arguing with me. They'll type something out that makes absolutely no sense, and I'm like, what? What is this? Yes, that's what I said in the video. I agree with you. And they reply back, and they're mad about something. I'm like, well, this has got to be a sock puppet. These people are crazy, y'all. Some people are just absolutely nuts. But I think I've rambled on for long enough, y'all. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Do you think the Supreme Court is going to side with the states, or are they going to side with the administration and overturn many decades of precedent in this country? This is what I'm loving about the Trump administration right now. They're upending a whole lot of stuff, and stuff that needs to be brought up, relitigated, because by God, we got to move on. We got to keep things moving. But y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. Y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.